Hey guys, here to read some of your social studies work for this week. This is on Rome early settlers, so let's get to it. Essential themes: geography. Why do people move and live where they do? Culture. How do we know what we know about human history? So, not without reason did gods and men choose this spot for the site of our city, the healthy hills, the river to bring us produce from the inland regions, and seaborne commerce from abroad. The sea itself, never enough for convenience, yet not so near as to bring danger from foreign fleets. Our situation in the very heart of Italy. All these advantages make it, of all places in the world, the best for a city destined to grow great. That was the historian Livy in his work, The Early History of Rome. So why did people first settle the Italian peninsula? As you learned in your last lesson, the geography of the Italian peninsula created an ideal climate for early settlers to establish farming communities. Those communities later grew to become cities. While it's true that the geography surrounding Rome gave the people who settled the land advantages as they worked to build their civilization, it was the unique characteristics of those people that led to the enduring greatness of Rome. In this lesson, you will learn about those early settlers. So who were the earliest settlers to land around Rome? Rome wasn't built in a day. The earliest Roman settlers called themselves Latins and probably migrated from Central Asia. The Latins were farmers and shepherds who wandered into Italy across the Alps around 1000 BCE. They settled on either side of the Tiber River in a region they called Latium. The 7 nearby hills offered them some protection, and the river gave them a valuable resource: water. Flatland near the Tiber was perfect for farming. The area offered everything they needed to thrive. The original Roman settlement, built by the Latins, was a cluster of wooden huts set atop one of its 7 hills, the Palatine Hill. Later, a Roman address on Palatine Hill indicated great wealth. The word palace is derived from the stately homes found on Palatine Hill. The Latins, however, were not alone in the region. They shared space on the Italian peninsula with other tribes such as the Sabines, the Ligurians, the Umbrians, and the Etruscans, as well as with colonizers from Carthage and Greece. Between 750 and 600 BCE, Greek settlers established about 50 colonies on the coast of southern Italy and Sicily. The cities became prosperous and commercially active. They brought all of Italy, including Rome, into closer contact with Greek civilization. The Greeks taught the Romans how to grow grapes and olives and to use the Greek alphabet. Romans also copied Greek sculpture and other art forms. At roughly the same time as Greek colonization in the south, another people invaded and settled in northern Italy. These were the Etruscans, and they had an even greater influence on the development of Rome. Many Etruscans were rich miners and traders. Others were devoted to art. They painted murals and created jewelry, tools, and weapons. The Etruscans were also skilled in making clothing, metal items, and beautiful pottery. The Roman mosaic of grape harvest. So what did the Romans borrow from the Etruscans? The Etruscans are an especially interesting, even mysterious group. To this day, scientists remain unsure where the Etruscans came from. At one time, common belief was that the Etruscans were one united people who brought their language, religion, dance, and music with them from the East. Because so much of their culture reflects a Greek influence, scholars reason that they must have come from the Greek world, or someplace nearby, such as Asia Minor, or modern-day Turkey. So as of right now, we still don't know where they came from. Recently, however, archaeologists have compared Etruscan city design to even older cities in northern Italy and noted distinctive similarities. The same is true of Etruscan burial practices. As a result, some scientists have changed how they think about Etruscans. Rather than existing as one people, united by a shared past, evidence now suggests that Etruscan culture was a melting pot that welcomed new people and new ideas. Historically, a stronger culture emerges when the intermingling of influence occurs. Something that's cool about these words, that you notice that they're all bolded here, right? So if you don't know what a melting pot is, you can just click here and it tells us, or it takes us over to a definition where it says melting pot, a pot in which metals or other substances are melted or fused. But I don't think it's talking about actual metal, right? So over here, a country, locality, or situation in which cultural assimilation results in blending the heritage and traditions of previously distinct ethnic groups. So Another way of understanding this, it just basically means a bunch of different like races and ethnicities coming together, like they're all living in one spot, so they start blending their heritage together. That's what a melting pot would be. Rome was a village with straw and wooden huts when the Etruscans came. After they conquered the Latins around 650 BCE, however, that changed. After their conquest of the Latin people, the Etruscans put a king in charge and ruled Rome for over 100 years. During that time, the Etruscans introduced an alphabet and a written language that over time grew into Latin. Interestingly, despite the discovery of over 10,000 Etruscan inscriptions, scientists have yet to interpret the Etruscans' writing. Until they do, it seems much of Etruscan culture will remain a mystery. So as of right now, they still don't know how to read their writing. What we do know of the Etruscans, however, is pretty fascinating. They taught the early Romans how to pave roads and drain swamps and build sewer systems. They also taught the Romans to build temples and public squares. They even introduced their style of dress, the toga, to the Romans. Most importantly, the Etruscans showed the early Romans how to build an effective army. Later, the Romans copied the Etruscan military model and used it to build an empire. Because of those contributions to Roman culture, you might say that the Etruscans really were the people of early Rome. And you would be right. In time, the Latins, the Etruscans, and the other people around Rome began to think of themselves simply as Romans. What they needed was something to pull them firmly together as one group. They had a common language, Latin. They had building skills. They were the center of a great deal of trade and traffic. Just as you might say with pride, I am an American, Rome's early settlers needed to be able to say with pride, I am a Roman. What the early Romans needed to unify them as one people was the history, just as other civilizations before them had done. The early Romans rooted their history in myth. So why is 509 BCE an important date in Roman history? Let's talk about the Roman myth. The history of ancient Rome begins with the overthrow of foreign kings in 509 BCE. Romans, however, like to date the history of their city to 753 BCE. That is when a legendary hero called Romulus is said to have founded Rome. A legend is a popular story from earlier times that cannot be proved. So maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen. The legend about Rome's founding begins with Aeneas. Sorry, I lost my place. The legend about Rome's founding begins with Aeneas, a hero of the Trojan War. According to the legend, Aeneas settled in Italy after Troy was destroyed by the Mycenaean Greeks. The legend continues with the twins, Romulus and Remus. In some versions of the myth, Romulus and Remus were the descendants of the hero Aeneas. The founding of Rome. Once upon a time, there were two brothers named Romulus and Remus. Now we're going into the myth of it, right? This is the story. There were the twin sons of the war god, Mars, and his wife, the Princess Rhea. They were cute kids, but their wicked uncle was tired of hearing them cry. He put the two babies in a basket, pushed the basket into the river, and walked away. That's the end of that, he said, wiping his wet hands on his toga as he walked along the riverbank. Either the basket will sink or someone will find them, and he shrugged. It really did not matter to him what happened to the twins, as long as they were no longer around. The gods must have been watching over the boys because the basket did not sink. It floated gently down the Tiber River and drifted onto shore near an area marked by its 7 hills. Tired from a fruitless day of hunting, the she-wolf was taking a long drink at the water. With hunger gnawing at her, she sighed heavily. The basket bumped up against her feet before she even noticed it. Hoping for a quick meal, she lifted her head and looked inside. Seeing the twin boys inside, she brightened and her spirits lifted. Instead of making a quick meal of the basket's contents, however, the she-wolf carried the babies back to her den and fed and cared for them as if they were her own. Right? So here's a picture of the little she-wolf. And instead of eating them when she found them in the basket, she said, you know what? I'm going to feed them and take care of them. And it made her feel better too. About a week later, a shepherd killed the she-wolf. Well, that's sad. He looked down for her cubs. Imagine his surprise when he found 2 healthy baby boys instead. He took the boys home where his wife was thrilled. Romulus and Remus did not know they were the sons of a god. They were happy being shepherds like their father. One day when they had grown into strong young men, they decided to start a town of their own. A city of their own. They settled on a spot at the very top of 7 hills near the Tiber River. Where would they where would they ever find a better place to build? Some of their friends decided they wanted to live in this grand city too. But who would rule the new city? That's when the trouble began, because both boys wanted to be in charge. They both wanted to be king, and they agreed to let the gods decide. Remus stood on top of one hill called the Avetine. Romulus stood on top of another hill called the Palatine. When 6 vultures flew high above Remus's head, his friends cheered. Almost immediately, 12 vultures flew over Palatine Hill, where Romulus was standing. After a bit of an argument, everyone except Remus named Romulus king. That very same day, Romulus began to build a wall for his city. After working on the wall for a short while, it came up to his knees. Remus, angry about how things had turned out, began to tease his brother. "What a ridiculous wall," he sneered. I'll show you what your enemies will do to a silly little wall like that." With one leap, he jumped over the wall. "And here's how I'll greet my enemies," Romulus cried angrily. He hit Remus with the big rock he was holding and killed him. No one in the city knew if Romulus meant to kill his brother. Everyone agreed, however, that Remus had started the fight, so Romulus became king, and naturally, he named his new city after himself, Rome. The last question here is, according to Roman mythology, how was Rome founded? What was the real story? All right, well, that's our reading. I hope you guys got a lot from this. It's a pretty cool story about Romulus and Remus, right? Being raised by a she-wolf and then raised by a shepherd. There's a lot here. Take it in, answer the questions, and if you have any questions, please ask your teachers. Have a great day.